Welcome to Buc'In the News, presented by the Pewtercast. This is Buc'In the News for what really, Ren, is the final week of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2017 season. I am Brent Allen, your host, joined as always by Ren Dax, my co-host. Ren, we've switched places. You are back in sunny, warm Florida. I am in the frigid tundra of the southern north of Virginia, freezing my cananes off in Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. But how's the nice warmth going on down there for you?
It's good. It's pretty nice. Yeah. When you've been traveling the past 2 days, and I traveled today, and we left so early, like I really couldn't check the news or, see the map. But when we got home early this morning here in St. Pete, the news was on, and the whole entire United States is in blue, except for like the southern tip of Texas and about central Florida down. So, yeah, it's nice. 60 degrees now is like, I understand now why Northerners wear shorts and shirts at 60 degrees. Mm-hmm. Because coming from, as I was just telling you right before we started recording, it was 15 degrees like when we left. Right. North Carolina to go to the airport. It was like 5 a.m, so the sun wasn't up yet, but still, that's that's cold. There was a few things I saw for the first time. Icicles. I've never seen an icicle.
Really?
Saw that. Yeah, never seen an icicle, man.
Wow. Yeah, you've been in Florida your whole life. That would make sense, but wow.
Yeah, never seen an icicle, never seen like water frozen over, like out in nature that wasn't in an ice cube tray. So I saw that. That was cool. We did some hiking, and there was some where I was Brevard, which is about 30 minutes outside of Asheville, basically right on the North Carolina, South Carolina border. Mm-hmm. And they call it the land of 10,000 waterfalls. So we did some hiking, and we saw some. Yeah,
it's beautiful country up there, right that way. Really
oh yeah, I'm not really sure, quote unquote, what God's country is. I don't know if it's the plains in the middle or the hills in the south or
it's the rolling hills of Kentucky, my friend. The rolling hills of Kentucky.
It seems like anyone that lives in the country, they call it's God's country. Okay, but so is Wyoming. It's God's country. But yeah, there were some really pretty awesome spectacles of nature I got to see. And apparently, I guess there's this famous waterfall that was in a couple of movies like Hunger Games and Last of the Mohicans, and you can see why they picked it. So It was a good time.
Cool, man. Well, I'm glad you're home. I am here through the rest of the week and going to try to stay warm. But hey, listen, we are doing the show actually a day earlier than what we would normally do this show, Ren. But we also missed our final thoughts show from earlier this week. Right. Just with, just with the holidays. And, it occurs to me, this is our second season into this, Ren. This is your first Christmas season, holiday season with us here at the show. And I kind of forgot about this from last year, that by the time we get to this part of the season on a podcasting level, it actually gets really hard because of all the holiday stuff. And, and honestly, this year being out of the playoffs, there's a little bit of I don't care. I'm going to hang out with my family, So, but with that, we are still, season is still on. We still have one more game. The season is not done yet. And with that, here's what we're going to do for today's show, because we're a little bit early on the Buck and the news side. We're definitely late for the final thoughts game. And I'll be honest with you, Ren, I don't necessarily care anymore about the game on Sunday, this past Sunday. I'm over it. I'm done. We're moving on. We got the Saints this weekend.
Yep.
But, so we're going to kind of smash some things together. We did get some emails this week. Actually had a couple came in, from last week as well. So, we'll go through the emails, and we'll still have that segment, and then we'll roll into all the regular Buck in the News stuff. We'll see where we are with the transactions so far this week. We'll talk about a couple of the news bits that have come out of one Buck, and I'll remind everybody, usually we do this at the end of the week so that kind of the news cycle has completed by the time we're recording. There may still be some developments after we have our discussion tonight about some of these things, but we'll at least give our thoughts on where they are as of right now, and then we'll wrap up with our injury report as it is right now heading into the game. Looks like we're I don't know. Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. So, with that, Ren, why don't we go ahead and we'll just start off with emails today. We'll we usually save this for its own thing, or we save it for an end, but let's just go ahead and do this up at the front. Always start off this section by looking at iTunes, looking at the reviews. We have a couple of new ratings this week, Ren, but we don't have any new reviews. So, those are two separate things. Like, we've got a couple new 5 stars, but nobody actually left the reviews. So, thank you to you guys who left those ratings out there. And I just want to take this opportunity to welcome anybody to send us in a review on iTunes. Those are always appreciated, and if you do that, we would love to read that on air. Just go over to iTunes, search for the Pewtercast. You can rate us however you want to rate us. 5 stars is always preferred. Or, and either way, you can also write us a review if you have not done so already, and we'll see that, and we'll get that in to a future show here of the Pewtercast. Now, with that, Ren, I'm going to go over to the emails. I got just a couple from last week that I did want to get into. Our first one comes to us from our friend Brian from Memphis, who, has become
Brian from Memphis.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people to talk to on the Instant Cast. Brian tends to have a very, peculiar thoughts when it comes to Jameis. Now, he sends us a very long email, and since this one is a little bit dated, I'm actually going to skip most of it and go all the way down to the bottom paragraph where he kind of sums everything up. But before I do this, I want to read at least the first line of this email. He says, "Hello guys, this is the infamous Brian from Memphis. Let me be the first to say, Jameis had a great game."
Are we talking about, is this the Atlanta game, or is
yes,
this the,
you take your pick, because I think Jameis had a great game on either one. But specifically here, he is talking about the Atlanta game, and he says he can see the smile and the "I told you so" face on Ren right now.
Yes, that's it.
There you go. Brian goes on. He talks a lot about the game and different things, but he gets down to the end of his email, and this is what he says. And Ren, I think we're probably going to talk about this a lot more here over the next couple of weeks, but he says, last but not least, let me go on record and say, do not fire the coaches or Jason Light. Lots of exclamation marks. He says, history indicates that this will be the last ride for all of them. Usually the Glazers give the GM 2 chances to hire a coach, and if they don't get it right, they are gone. Dominic hired Schiano and Raheem Morris. Koetter is Light's second coaching choice. Although they picked up his 2018 option, he may still be out the door. I think the Glazers give Light another year to get it right. But does he fire Koetter and Smith or let it ride out? Ren?
Well, Dominic didn't hire Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith hired, Light didn't. Yeah, okay. Start over. Hello. Lovie Smith brought in Jason Light. It wasn't the other way around. So Jason Light technically has only hired one coach, and that would be Dirk Koetter.
Right.
So just to clear that up.
So maybe that actually bodes well for Light, that he would get his second pick here, if that is the situation we find ourselves in about a week. Or not even a week. Yeah, gosh, half a week.
If that pattern stays still. I'm in the camp of keep them both. I know there's some talk out there like it's a done deal. There's some talk out there where it's John Gruden, and if it's not John Gruden, then just keep Dirk Koetter. I want to keep them both. I think we'll talk more about that later. But I'm glad to see that Brian's always been fair. He's just criticisms of Jameis were just a little bit harsher than, I thought. And I always would tell Brian that, well, necessarily you're not wrong, but I'm just not there yet in my critiquing of Jameis Winston. I think he needed more games and more time. And since he's come back from his injury, I think he's thrown the ball really, really well. Of course, the fumbles and being loose in the pocket with the ball is becoming each week increasingly disturbing. But as far as staying in the pocket and sort of eating the ball and taking care of the ball, and Dirk Koetter said something this week at the press conferences, or maybe it was after the game, after the Carolina game. And it's not only that he's throwing the ball well, but he's throwing the ball well with different types of passes. His lollipop passes, the touch passes, and when he's got to fire it in there. I think he has been more accurate on the deep ball since he's been back, but just a hair, nothing like, problem solved. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so, you're right, Brian. Jason did have a great game. And let's hope that it continues for one more. Give us all hope going into the off season.
Yeah, and Ren, maybe we'll talk about that here when we get to the end of the emails. But what that begs the question of what does a win here at the end of the season mean for the Buccaneers? What does it mean for the locker room? What's it mean for us as fans? Let's not talk about that right now, but let's put a pin in that because I think that's a conversation definitely worth having. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the Koetter thing. I'll tell you exactly where I've kind of landed on this because I've kind of gone back and forth. I got to be honest with you. I've not been 100% solid on this. But anyway, Brian goes on. He says, I say keep them both and trust the process. Keep in mind that we are playing rookies day one, O.J., Evans, Beckwith, Godwin. So that gives Light ammo that he is drafting the talent. It's a matter of the coaches getting the most out of them. In Koetter's defense, I believe he has the scheme to be a top 5 offense. It's the self-inflicted turnovers and mishaps that hurts our process. Jameis being a good piece of the turnover pie, kind of what you were just alluding to there, Ren. The fumbles, we can talk about interceptions to touchdown ratio all day long, but that doesn't actually account for fumbles. And I believe I read earlier this week from Greg Allman, perhaps it was Rick Stroud, it was one of those guys over at Tampa Bay Times, saying that just highlighting something that I think we've talked about over the course of this week in news cycles out there, that Jameis is leading the league in fumbles lost among quarterbacks.
Well, he's had 25 the past 2 years. He led the league in fumbles last year and fumbles lost last year, and he's doing it again this year. He's leading the league. I think he's tied with somebody in a couple of those categories. But he's still in first place in the amount of fumbles and also the amount he loses.
Well, here's the good news in all that, Ren.
Sure.
He hasn't regressed.
Actually, he has, because he has 5 more this year. One game to play and 3 games missed. So, as far as fumbling the ball, he has regressed. Or he hasn't plateaued yet. Who knows? He might still have some more of those in the bag. I think it's something he'll really work on in the off season. And the list of things that's keeping Jameis from, I'm not going to sit here and say being 130, QBR passer rating every week, but from the serious conversation of cementing himself somewhere between 5 and 10 as league quarterback year after year after year after year. He's only got 1 or 2 more things to fix. And that's the plus side. So once he fixes it, he seems to get it. Once it clicks, it's set in stone. It just takes a little longer than a lot of fans, and sometimes myself included, for it to click. It's like how many times do I have to tell you to hang on the ball, Jameis? How many times? Just tell me. 100? Because I'll say it 100 times. But the good news is, once he it sort of clicks in his head, it doesn't seem he repeats those mistakes very often again.
Brian goes on, he says, when you have a third-year quarterback throwing for 4,000 yards a season, the plays and schemes are there. It's not a matter of coaching in that element. It's about completing drives. That falls more on the players than the coaching. We don't have a locker room issue or headlines that he's lost the locker room. He is still respected by the players. The players have to do a better job on the field. I would actually back that up with what Brian's saying, Ren, and saying that the reports that we have from the people who are in the locker room day after day after day, from the people who are asking these guys questions, it is exactly the opposite of losing the locker room. Like, everybody is saying how Coach Koetter still has the players. The players are still fighting for Coach Koetter. They're still listening to him. Like, everybody is saying that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it feels like everyone at some point after these games, that even though they know that it counts for nothing, moral victories, trying hard, well, you get paid to, but even though as much as you don't want to bring that up, when you watch the games, you're like, it's God. You might want to switch the narrative to they played well enough to win that game. You know, when they have nothing to play for, they're still losing, but instead of saying, oh, they tried really hard or they looked really good at it, it's like they played well enough to win. And they played it well enough to win. I think every game since Jameis has been back, but especially the last two, the two division games. And definitely the Carolina game. That has to be the most standout. Or the Green Bay. I mean, hold the guy to 84 yards passing and you lose. Like, how does that even happen? But anyway, yeah. I'm glad that Brian is on board with that not being able to put up as many touchdowns in the red zone as we want to. He's seeing that it's more self-inflicted in execution than it is dumb play calling.
All right. Brian's going to go here and do something I've not heard anyone do this season, Ren. Like, ever. Maybe after the first two games. But I've just not heard this. He's going to build a defense for Mike Smith. So I'll read this, and he ends up his email with this. So here's what he says. He says, in Mike Smith's defense, he just didn't have the tools to have a respectable defense. He had no pass rush this season. No pass rushers, this season. Both the guys that were designated the pass rushers are not on the team. What defensive coordinator can come up with a scheme that involves no pass rush? I can understand the glaring issue with the defense, and that's not his fault. It's not like we had the guys to get to the quarterback, and he couldn't draw up the plays or the schemes to use them. Without an inch of a pass rusher all season, it's no way to stop a good offense. You can't play zone or man without a pass rush. Any quarterback in the league is going to sit back and carve up the defense apart if you can't rush them. If the only way to create a pass rush is to blitz and have an extra person, then you leave a hole in the defense and hope that the quarterback doesn't figure it out by the time the defender gets there. Considering the fact that we play Breeze, Ryan, and Cam twice a year, that recipe will not work. Hope we finish strong. Sent from my desk at work.
Nice. Way to do it at work. Well, that's sort of the million-dollar question. I understand what he's saying, but every team suffers injuries. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard to. You're last in sacks. That means you have. I get what you're saying. Your top two pass rushing ends, didn't make it through week 3 or whatever when Noah Spence. One of them never made it on the field. Whenever Noah Spence got shut down and put on IR. But you do have a 6-time Pro Bowler defensive tackle. And you do have 2 defensive tackles that you asked for in free agency, in Ayers and Baker. At least, maybe not personally, but the style, like they were checked through you, like, especially this year when everyone put on this extra. Golston put on weight, McCoy put on weight, McDonald put on weight. They brought in a big guy in Baker. Last year at the end of the year, they brought in Salinga, a big guy. They drafted a big guy in Tui Kolovatu. So, I mean, they're doing this through Mike Smith, and so then you have to bring it down to coaching. Every team has injuries, and you can generate 0 pass rush. I mean, the Bucs luck into sacks; they don't create sacks. Mm-hmm. So, I just don't know if that's enough to save him, or at least save some of his assistants. But yes, you can't. If you don't have a pass rush, you can't cover. So we really don't. It's hard to tell how good some players are. Mm-hmm. We might be sort of figuring that with T.J. Ward, or maybe when Josh Norman was in Carolina and he had that great year. He's a shutdown corner. Then he goes to a team that doesn't have this outstanding front 7 pass rush, and he's pedestrian. So are our corners bad, or are they really good? But since there's no pass rush, you're asking way too much of any corner. I'm sure the answer is somewhere in between. I understand your argument. I just don't think it's you have to figure something out to be able to get a pass rush, and that's good coaching. And he's tried. I mean, we've done 3-4s and 4-3s and 2-4-4s, 2-4-5s. I mean, he's done everything in the book, so. Maybe it is he doesn't have the horses, but he definitely had a hand in the past 2 years of picking them. So,
Yeah, I get where Brian's going with this, and, I agree with him to a point. I mean, listen, when your guys aren't there, you're playing with what you got. And I mean, Mike Smith has not stayed with the exact same thing all season. We have seen him make adjustments. He may have made too few and made them too late. I think that's very possible. Maybe not. I don't know. But, I think Brian brings up a good point. I think in the end, though, honestly, if Koetter winds up staying, well, first of all, if Koetter goes, Mike Smith's gone. And most of this coaching staff is going to be gone. There's a couple that might be holdovers, kind of like George Warhop was a holdover from Lovey's coaching staff. But,
right.
Most of these guys will be gone. And knowing what I know about Gruden, I can't say knowing Gruden because I don't know him, but knowing what I know about Gruden, I would venture to say he very well, if it's him, he very well could just say fire them all and I'm going to get my own guys anyway.
Right.
So there's that. But if Koetter does wind up staying, somebody's going to have to fall on the sword for the season. And, Mike Smith seems to be the obvious fall guy to me. However, the other side of that is he is under contract. He's not going to just quit. Mike Smith isn't going to resign. He may tell them, hey, fire me. Let me take the fall for this. But he's not quitting.
Right.
Because he's not going to give up that contract that they gave him. So if he doesn't quit, maybe the Glazers sit back and say, hey, listen, let's let the whole thing ride and see what happens because they've already got so much money invested. And listen, if they do fire Dirk Koetter, somebody put out, I don't remember exactly who it was, I said, look, if they fire Dirk Koetter, that means that the Glazers this coming year are going to be paying Lovie Smith for his final year of his contract. They're going to be paying, are they still paying Schiano?
No, they'll be paying Dirk Koetter, and
No.
then they'll be paying the new guy.
They'll be paying the new guy, and then they'll be paying Mike Smith as well. Because Mike Smith has apparently some monster contract that is on the level of a head coach, is the report. Now, nobody really seems to know for sure except for the people who inked the deal, but, so they, do the Glazers care to pay all that? I'm sure they care on some level, but, I don't know. So we'll see. But that would be my guess, that Smith winds up being the fall guy for the whole thing anyway. So, anyway, thank you, Brian, for your email. All right, moving on, we've got an email in from Chris from Alaska. Again, this is one that kind of came in late last week. I'm going to skip the long part of his email and come right back down to where he kind of sums everything up. And Chris says, this team, being that their record is 4-9, so remember this was before the Panthers game, going into this game, showed a lot of, this was actually heading
for the Atlanta game.
Yeah. Well, he came in after the Atlanta game, but he's talking coming into the Atlanta game. He says their record being 4-9 coming into the Atlanta game showed a lot of character, and they played the Atlanta game better than any of us expected. Let's be honest, most people thought that it would be a blowout, and we would hear the Gruden chants all game long. That wasn't the case, and the team played very well and never gave up. I'm not sure where this team is headed after the season, with possibly hiring a new GM and a new head coach. Dirk got a lot out of his players on Monday night and came up a tad bit short, but I think this bodes well for the Glazers and Dirk. If Dirk is retained, he must make a change at defensive coordinator, kind of what we were just talking about, Ren. Mm-hmm. Says there are reports Mike Smith might be the first in line for the Giants head coaching position, so he may not even have to fire him after all. And if he does have to fire him, it should be based on productivity of the defense of the last 2 years. He has maybe 10 games out of 32 where the defense played like a championship defense. Final grade for the team is a C+. Thanks for everything you do, and go Bucks, Chris from Alaska. Yeah,
yep.
I think we just talked about all that. So,
and you're welcome for everything we do.
Yes.
And I think that was pretty close to what we gave them after the Atlanta game. Was like a C+.
I think that's about right. Yeah. All right, we have. All right, new one coming in. This is from Walter.
Ooh, a new writer.
A new one, yeah. We've actually got a couple of new ones coming in today. This is from Walter. Walter says, "Hey fellas, my name is Walter." Huh?
Sorry, where's Walter from?
He doesn't say. At least not that I can
Walter?
see. Hey, no. We like Walter. Walter, next time you write in, just let us know where you're from. That's all.
I'm not saying I'm mad at. Well, I'm saying I'm mad at him, but I'm not saying I don't like him. But
All right.
If you listen to the show, you know we like to know where you're from.
Well, this is what he says. He says, my name's Walter, and I just started listening to the podcast.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
sorry, Walter.
Everything's good. He says he just started listening this season. He really enjoys our takes on the Bucs. He says he's been a Bucs fan most of my life. I have been a Bucs fan most of my life here he goes, in Central Illinois, Ren.
There we go.
There it is, where Tampa followers are few and far between. My girl Winnie has never been a football fan, but has been following the Bucs since we've met. We want to talk about running backs because this is kind of them writing together, I guess.
This is a family.
Yeah.
A couple's email.
Yeah. This is Walter and Winnie.
Couples email only. Couples emails only.
There you go.
Out on the skating rink.
I just got that. Okay. Yeah. Great.
Thanks.
Sorry. Anyway, he says, we want to talk about running backs. It was nice to see Peyton Barber get the start the other day. And that was with Doug Martin being active for the game. This is talking about, obviously, the Panthers game we just had. He says, I'd like to see him finish out through the year so that we can have a better idea of what he can do. Winnie roots more for the underdog and is a huge Jaquiz supporter, maybe wondering if he deserves more attention for his ability to step in as a clutch player. What are your thoughts on the running back situation going forward into next year?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Jaquiz isn't with the team. Let me check unless he's under contract, he may be. I think it's a total revamp. If Jaquiz comes back to training camp, I think he'll be on the bubble. I think Peyton Barber is probably the only person in that running back core right now that is guaranteed a spot on the roster next year. When training camp starts. I would like to see Doug Sims come back, Charles Sims, thank you. Charles Sims come back, but I know he's a free agent, so he might get priced out. Doug Martin, I don't think there's any way in hell they pay him the $5 million, $7 million, whatever they owe him next year. Hang on, I'm looking that up right now. They owe him $6.7 million next year. He's not going to play for that. At least not in Tampa. And, well, he won't get it anywhere. So, and look up Jaquiz. So I think it's going to be a total revamp. There'll probably be one or two. There's going to be a lot of people signed because they go to training camp with a lot of running backs, but you only have like 3 or 4 you're really looking at. I expect one in the draft and probably one free agent that you've heard of somewhere from before, and then a lot of just flyers, sort of like they brought in Blake Sims
and different guys like that.
Yeah, like Blake Sims,
yeah, that guy from last year.
the old quarterback from Alabama who's trying to catch on as a running back for 3 or 4 years now. So that's what I would expect to see going forward. Let's see, Jaquiz Rogers is owed $1.6 million next year. I doubt they'll let him go unless there's a coaching change. If Dirk Koetter is not the head coach, then I think Rogers would be out.
Yeah. Here's what I see happening. I think I said this on a couple of shows back, and I don't remember exactly how we got there, but it was Peyton Barber's on the roster next year, or at least through training camp. I'm not going to guarantee anything past training camp because we'll just have to wait and see what happens. No. But I think Peyton Barber's on. I think Doug Martin is gone. I think Charles Sims is a big red maybe. Charles Sims has had 2 bad years after one really, really great year and a fairly good rookie season. And Charles Sims will be, as you said, he'll be a free agent this year. I think the Bucs will probably make him an offer to sign him to a second contract. It will not be big though. So the question is another team going to make him a better offer? I think he'll certainly test the free agency market, but I don't think they're going to lock him up. It's possible just they'll make him an offer and let him go see what he can get somewhere else, and it's possible he winds up back with the Buccaneers.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily likely. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me. You know, we'll certainly,
it's a 50-50 with him.
It really is. It really is. Jaquiz Rogers, I think he will be on the roster come training camp. But as you said, I definitely think that there will be competition, and he'll probably get beat out. Currently he is basically our, what is he, punt return, kick return, one of those two, and kick return, and we've got other guys who can fill that role. We don't need a Jacquizz Rodgers on this team to be basically just a kick return. Yeah, especially not when you have like a Bobo Wilson or other people that can scoot around the field. So he'll have to do something magnificent to keep himself in on the team through training camp, but I just don't foresee that happening. But I do think that we'll see Jacquizz through training camp next year. That's just my guess. I can't say I have any insight into that.
Yeah, well, it's mostly you need people on your roster, and he's not really that expensive as far as running back goes. So why not keep him and just see what happens? And he's a good glue piece. You could put him anywhere, and I'm not going to say he's average to a little bit below average, but when push comes to shove, and he's been thrust into the starting role, he's done well enough for us to win some games. So. Really can't ask much more than that.
We picked Jacquizz up last year off the street. I mean, he was just a guy, didn't have a team, and we had a rash of injuries at running back. He was a guy that was familiar with Koetter's system, was able to come in and step in, and actually did pretty reasonable, pretty well, to the point that people thought that he should have gotten the starts all year long over Doug Martin through the offseason. If everybody remembers that. Jacquizz, unfortunately, has been very relegated to the background of the running back room, unfortunately.
Somebody's at the door.
They are. I'm here in the lobby of the hotel, so there'll be stuff happening in the background. It's okay.
What was that?
This phone for the.
Was that a room service?
I guess
the old school room service. Are you at a B&B?
Am I working? I don't know. All right, Walter and Winnie go on. They say, we've also noticed Eau Claire's development as a tight end, especially this past game when he was filling in for O.J. Howard. His catch in the Falcons game and then his run afterward were pretty impressive. Jason Light has a knack for finding undrafted offensive weapons, i.e. Cameron Brate, Adam Humphries, and now Anthony Eau Claire. How do you feel about Eau Claire?
I feel just the way you do. He, has shown enough to get Luke Stocker shipped out of town, so they could get him on the field to get him some playing time. The Bucs had a draftable grade on Anthony Eau Claire. And if O.J. Howard didn't fall to the Bucs in the first round, they probably would have drafted Eau Claire somewhere in the 6th or 7th round. So he was very close to becoming a Buccaneer draft pick. I like him. He's basically an O.J. Howard light is what it is. He's heavy. He's big and strong enough and mean enough in the run blocking, but he's athletic enough to get open against linebackers and some safeties. As we've seen, he hasn't dropped anything, so he can catch a little. That's basically all we saw out of Cameron Brate his first year was, that guy's got a little promise. And now look at him. So, I'm high on Eau Claire. I'm bullish on the Canadian.
Yep, I'm with you. I mean, you said it right at the top. He was enough to unseat Luke Stocker, who, a lot of people say, he's our best blocking non-offensive lineman, may even be our best offensive lineman on the team. I have not personally been in agreement with that. I feel like that might have been true in previous years. From what I watched on the tape, I don't feel like Luke Stocker was our best blocker anymore. I just don't. I don't know if he's just aged out, or where he's been. It's just not been what I've seen when I've looked at the tape. Though I can't say that I've sat there and watched every minute of every single game from the entire season either. Just the ones that I did watch, there was enough for me to go, So, the fact that he unseated Luke Stocker, who certainly was a veteran presence on this team, speaks highly. And, he's done enough to make me go, okay, I see what they see in him. I want to see more. More, please. So. But yeah, all right, and they wrap it up just saying thanks, Walter and Winnie.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for. It's always cool to have first-time writers.
Yeah, please email in again in the future. I'd love to do that. Stay with us through the off season. We're about to downshift into our off season schedule, so we'll have more time for different things. So, all right. Next email comes in from Adam. This is TV Sports Fanatic on Twitter. He is from Clearwater. I think he's emailed in a couple times before. Adam says, "Hey guys, I have been digging into some of the first half struggles of the Bucs team this season, and noticed that Jameis has been particularly bad in the second quarter of the games. His completion percentage is down, his QB rating is down, he gets sacked a bunch, and he has 0 touchdown passes. Do you think there is anything to this, or is it just a strange anomaly? I will say there is no correlation to the second quarters of his previous years." Looking forward to your comments. Adam from Clearwater, sent from my iPad.
First off, nice research, Adam.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Ren, he included all of his research. I'm not going to read it because that would be horrible to listen to. But this is a big document. This is a long document that he
went for it.
Down. Yeah.
Good job.
So, but he summed it up. Completion percentage is down in the second quarter. His QB rating goes down in the second quarter. He gets sacked a bunch in the second quarter, and he has no touchdown passes in the second quarter. This year. This is for this year.
All right. Okay. Well, this is what I would say. And this is off the top of my head. And Adam, if you want to, I'm telling you to do this research or even challenging you to do this research. But if you want to see if my reasoning off the top of my head is true, by all means do the research. I think it's because in the second quarter, the Bucs are already down 17 points, 21 points. They're behind. And that's when Jameis starts to push. That's when, how I have that saying that he tries to score 10 points every time the offense has the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of when the poise disappears. Now, I think he's been a lot better, once again, I will say, since he came back from his injury, especially in the poise department. But that's just off the top of my head was why I would think so, is because the game, especially on the road, has gotten almost out of hand where he has to push to try to make things happen, because it seemed, and this, once again, off the top of my head, it seemed like every time the opponent's offense got the ball, they were putting points up, and if you weren't matching them, then the game was going to get away from you. And that's just my theory.
I think it's a good theory. Yeah, I'm going to go with what Ren said. Ditto. I don't know. I don't know if there's any big correlation to that. I have said for a couple of years now, I think the most important quarter in football is the third quarter. For whatever reason, that seems to be the one where games if a team comes out and they have a good third quarter, generally they win the game. If they go out and have a bad third quarter, they generally lose the game. And that could be they have a good first half, they even have a good fourth quarter, but if they let that third quarter get away from them, I think it's the sneakiest quarter. I think it's the sleeper quarter of the game. So that tends to be the quarter I focus my energies on, but I don't know. It'd be interesting, but good research though. Good research, Adam. Please do more stuff like that and send it in, because that certainly gives you something to think about. And that'd be interesting to know, Ren. I'm
shocked that he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in the second quarter.
Yeah, because I kind of questioned that, and I perused his research, and I'm gonna just take it for granted that his research is right. There's no touchdowns in the. But hasn't that been a little bit of a storyline that we've had all year long? I'm sorry, a narrative that we've had all year long, because that's our buzzword for the year, right? Is how few points the Bucs score in the first half of any game. Certainly.
Yeah, it was in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there was something like they didn't score a touchdown in the first half for 3 or 4 games in a row.
Right. Or they've only scored 15 points in the first half for the last 6 games, or something like that, which is an abysmal rate when you divide that out over the games. So. Anyway, good research, Adam. All right, we got one more email before we move on to everything else. I believe, Ren, this is also a first-time writer.
Cool.
This is Forrest, and he says, I will not do this in a Forrest Gump impression. That would just be not good. He says, "Hey guys, just wanted to thank you for the great content every week. I'm a Bucs fan living in Washington State. Ooh,
holy cow!
Other corner of the country."
Yeah.
Said, "So this podcast gives me an outlet for being able to listen and get informative information on the team as well as discuss with other Bucs fans." You know, I love that, Ren. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Yeah, you know, I often used to say that we don't report the news, we just comment on the news.
Right.
And I like that. Like let Greg Allman and Rick Stroud and Roy Cummings and those guys be the people who break news and report it. We're here to talk. As fans of the team, we're here to talk about our team, right? Those guys can get the scoops. So, certainly we like to discuss this with other Bucs fans. It says, he goes on to say, this season can only be summed up with one word in my view: disappointing. From the injuries to our kicking game, especially early on, to a lack of pass rush and secondary, to our record. You name it, this season was disappointing. I agree. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say massively disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the perfect word for it. And everyone's felt it. And I think that's why there's been such a backlash recently on, certain players or the coaches or, I've joked earlier in the year, okay, who's head, in the queue for the guillotine this week? It was always somebody new to sort of, vent your frustrations on. But yeah, from what, we've talked about it, the big hype and Hard Knocks and, we all drank the Kool-Aid. We said they were going 11-5. And they didn't. It disappointed me massively.
And to your point, Ren, this week, as we record this episode, the guy whose head is in the guillotine, Swaggy Baker.
Swaggy Baker.
And we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But anyway, Forrest goes on to say, I wanted to ask you guys a question on what you felt was the biggest disappointment of the year overall. He goes on. He says, it's easy to say the record, but what specifically have you found yourself most frustrated or disappointed in?
Personally, I'm gonna have to say Doug Martin.
Yep.
Because I really thought that he was going to come back with a fire, Remember that comment Jason Light made during the off season about Doug Martin, but maybe he's just a guy that needs a carrot in front of him. And this was the biggest carrot of all. I mean, they've been very, very, and I don't even mind saying this word, nice to Doug Martin.
Sure.
From what he did to them last year, leaving him hanging in the Saints game and then getting suspended for the Carolina game, the beginning of this year, and then they didn't cut his pay, which they didn't owe him. So he made $6.5 million or $5.7 million this year to put in that performance. So that's personally, I'm going to have to say Doug Martin. But thinking this as a podcaster and trying to talk to other Buck fans, I'm probably going to have to say the defense, and in particular probably the pass rush, because before we were on the 11-5 train and we're going to the playoffs, here we go, no one can stop us. We're on we need to bring Mike Smith back because we have a dominant defense train during the off season, and it has been worse than I don't know if it was worse than it was the first half of last year, but they didn't have that 5-game streak like they did last year. They are getting turnovers, but man, when you put the feet to the fire, the defense just doesn't show up week after week after week after week. And
in fact, what we're seeing though is in the clutch moment of the game is when the defense collapses.
Yeah, put the feet to the fire.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think so. Personally, it was Doug Martin because I even had a bet with Isbits from Joe Bucks fan, which I won.
Did you ever collect on that, by the way?
No, of course not.
Isbits.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, he's not. He hasn't been very communicative about it. But I can't tell if it's like that's just the kind of the way he is. He likes to hang on to his money until he has to, because you always hear Ira on his podcast clamoring for a raise, like at least once a week.
Sure.
But then Ira Kaufman is, he's Ira Kaufman, so he that could just be his personality where, he clamors for a raise once a week since, he got his first job.
Right.
So who knows? But anyway, no, I did not collect on that. So personally, Doug Martin, because I did have so much emotionally invested in him personally, I don't want to say I was staking my reputation, but I really felt against a lot of people, against whatever the people were saying, that he was going to make the team and have a really big year. And I was half right. He made the team. But, yeah, he had a terrible year, and it looks like it's hard to argue with all those people that said that he was done and washed up that he's not. So he could go somewhere else, have a good season, but I think he has one left, and, that's it. He might not even have one left. So, And then speaking overall in a general to our listeners, I would have to say, the defense, and the defense not showing up in the clutch. When the offense needs them to get a stop, get the ball back, don't let the team drive down and take the lead, break the tie, whatever it is. But it seems like week in and week out, they just don't answer the bell.
Yeah, I had three things that immediately came to my mind, and you just said the top two.
All right.
So for that, I think I'll just throw out my three. Actually, I've kind of got a 3B, which is more of a personal thing to me that I don't think too many other people care about. But Forrest's question is what were we personally most disappointed in? But my number three, the big one, honestly, is the offensive line. Our friend Derek over at What the Buck, he really pounded the drum for the idea that, we did improve our offensive line. We, things actually are looking up for our offensive line by the move with Marpet over to center, adding in Sweezy, stabilizing. Nobody saw coming on this offensive line this year was that stupid rotating guard position. Now, Does that rotating guard thing screw the entire lineup in such a way that it makes our offensive line a piss poor thing for the entire season? And for whatever reason, the coaches couldn't get their heads out of the sand to look up and see that that's what it was. I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, I think if you were to ask them, like, hey, listen, does that one rotating guard position equate to, what have we played, 15 games so far this season? At least 13 games of piss poor offensive line play as a whole. And they'll probably look at you and go, no, it's not just that one. It's other things that go into that. But, to me, the offensive line is a big one. And then the other one to me personally, and this goes back to the whole leadership thing, the culture thing that I'm all about. I referenced this a little bit earlier this season, and I'm starting to see it a little bit in the latter half of the season, but still not a ton, is this almost abandoning of the things that they were doing last year from a culture standpoint. And I'll reference, things like, you always heard the word family last year. You haven't heard it a ton this year. Just those things that we would get glimpses into the locker room of how the team was being led and how, the team was coming together. And it's not as public this year, and we're not seeing it as much this year. And so I can only assume that it's not as much of a thing this year. And it's harder to do, especially when you have Winston, who's kind of leading the charge on that, who had the first half of the season like he did, where, let's face it, it wasn't really a great first half of the season and hurt his credibility of what he could say in the locker room a little bit, or at least presumably it would have, right? So there's a little bit of disappointment in that to me, but practically the offensive line, I think, also falls into that category.
I think the offensive line's a good one, especially in the run blocking.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that maybe not hearing the word family a lot has more to do with the record, or at least not winning. Because when you're winning, you sort of like, I got my brother's back. We're a family. Let's go out there. Let's keep this thing rolling. Let's go. And then as you lose one week, and then you lose week 2, then you lose 3 in a row, and it starts to turn to like, okay, this needs to end.
Right.
Do your job. That's how the talk starts to change too. Like, it's like you need to be better.
Right.
We all need to be better. We're still a family, but it gets just a little more not so vague. And when you're losing, you're searching for answers. When you're winning, you're just trying to repeat what you did.
Yeah. So let's compare this to last year. Okay, last year we started hearing those words and we started hearing the rumblings of that when they were still losing, and it was after that those sorts of things. Okay, and I can't point to everything. I don't honestly remember everything that happened last year, but it was when those sorts of things started happening. Give them a couple weeks, and then they went on that big 5-game winning streak, and things really seemed to turn around for the team as a whole. Now that also went to, they changed up the way they communicate and different things, but the change in language preceded the record. And I've always said that a winning culture is not defined by the record. The record is defined by the winning culture. And, I still stick by that. Now, this is a different situation because the Bucs are used to winning at this point, and all of a sudden they're starting to lose a whole lot. And so, if the words start dropping off, if they stop doing the things that they were doing, that then actually, Ren, becomes a failure of leadership. So it could be what you're saying, that, when things got hard is when things, shifted. That's a failure of leadership. The other failure of leadership is actually if they actually stop talking about it first, and then the record follows. So it could have gone either way. All I know is that I just don't remember. I don't remember sensing. I don't know if you could ever sense it last year. I could almost sense a camaraderie, a togetherness, a closeness in the team last year that even since training camp I haven't felt this year. And it's just this weird ethereal vibe. You can't put your finger on it. It's just a sensing. And I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about, or am I just?
No, I know where you're going, but unfortunately, I'm still on. Well, when you win, everyone's a lot closer than when you're losing.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I mean, but when you're in that 5-game win streak and you're pushing towards the playoffs, the team's going to be closer, and then you separate for 3 or 4 months, and you come back together and. There's new faces, and you got to sort of rebuild. We did get off to a 2-2 start, but it was a little disappointing. It was, we start off the season. Well, let's just toe the line until Doug Martin gets back, and then this offense is going to take off. And as soon as Doug Martin gets back, the offense
happened.
Nothing happened, and then the record took a nosedive. So. They haven't had that little streak or that moment where their extra heart, their extra work, the extra time they put in, their extra effort, they're putting in to try to, turn the ship around. It's never materialized. And last year it did. So, I hear you. Yes. Does it feel from the outside the team's not as close as it was last year? Yes, but I still think the reason why is because all the work you put in, once it starts to pay off, that's when people come together. And when you're doing, the same amount of work or even more work, and it's not paying off, you're still grasping, you're looking for reasons why. And, even if you're not physically pointing a finger at somebody, in your head you are. It's like, it's like, it's that son of a bitch next to me, I know it. He's just not doing it. He's not getting his job done.
Right. And where I'll end this, because the thing is, Ren, you're right. That can be a source of it. It could be this other thing, but it could be that as well. Either way, and this would go back to Forrest's question here. The disappointment that I have is there has been a failure of leadership in the locker room, I feel like, this year, as far as how they're setting the tone for culture. And that's going to come in either one of those scenarios.
But I don't think that's fair to say, because we're not in the locker room. We don't know.
You're right. And so we can only judge based on
the record.
The record and what we see, from what
game
50 rows up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly.
I mean, so you're absolutely fair.
With no audio.
Exactly. So Forrest has an idea. He has something different than what either one of us has said. He says, right. I would easily say it's how poor our pass rush and secondary have played. I really liked VH3 being the pick last year, and I definitely noticed some improvement in his play at times this season, but I think most would agree that he has underwhelmed to this point. Also, with Grimes potentially not returning, I really hope that we are able to solve the future CB2 role this year in the draft, assuming that Hargreaves moves to the CB1 role. Anyway, guys, keep up the great content, and I will definitely try to call in one of these times on the Instant Cast show. Go Bucks, Forrest.
Well, Forrest, you got one left. One Instant Cast left.
Mm-hmm.
So till next year, I guess. Yeah, I mentioned the pass rush a little bit, but then he's right. You're right. I backed off it and sort of, put it on, not coming through in the clutch as far as the defense. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be at least one new face starting at cornerback next year, and I don't think they're on the team right now.
You mean you don't think that our starting cornerbacks next year are going to be Vernon Hargreaves, Bobby McClain, and Javian Elliott?
Don't forget Ryan Smith.
And Ryan Smith. Oh yeah, Ryan Smith.
Like, it might be, in some people's minds, it might be Brent Grimes moves on. Hargreaves goes out the left corner because he did have a good game when he played Grimes' side of the field, and Ryan Smith stays at corner too. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
No, I agree with you.
But, as soon as a new coach, if a new coach comes in, then none of this matters because it all gets blown up again. Because, like you said, it's going to be a new defensive coordinator, and everybody starts from scratch, There is no past or prior practices or games. I mean, they're going to watch film and stuff, but, maybe Hargreaves takes, to the new scheme like fish to water. You don't know. He could turn into the best cornerback ever. It's not going to happen, but maybe. So I think that we either draft a cornerback that's going to be starting on the outside somewhere, or we're going to get one in free agent that's going to be starting outside somewhere in one of those two spots. So if everything stays status quo as the coaches go, I see left side the new person. I see right side Ryan Smith, and I see Hargreaves slot to start training camp. If Koetter and Smith stay.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, Ren, that is going to wrap up all of our emails. So I want to say thank you to everybody who sent in emails this week. And if you guys ever want to do that, you can shoot them to us to thepewtercast@gmail.com. We kind of read them in order as they come in, and try to hit them and interact with them. So thank you guys so much. It's one of our more favorite parts of the show, Ren, I think, is getting to interact with our fans and getting their thoughts on what's happening out there, our fellow fans, and getting their thoughts and being able.
But
to
not fans of us.
Well, they can be fans of us. I love them being fans of us, but
that'd be nice.
They like us. They really like us. But, we're fans of the Buccaneers. All right, let's go ahead and transition over into kind of our normal Buck in the News slot. I know we're coming right up here on an hour, so we'll hit these pretty quick. This is where we start the show with transactions, Ren. There's one transaction, and it has to do with practice squad. They released a guy, and they re-signed him.
Yep. So Ferris State, a wide receiver.
Yeah, Jake Lampman. They released him and then re-signed him. So I don't know what's up with that. But that's all that happened. He's a practice squad guy.
Yeah, he was on the Saints last year.
Yeah.
got promoted to the active roster eventually. Then they cut him, and he's actually been with us twice. He was signed on my birthday, November 22nd, and then they released him in December, almost a month later, and then they re-signed him 4 days later. So, small town kid, tangible 6 feet, 205 pounds, Ferris State. I don't even know how low of a division that is. Let's see, they play in the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, the GLIAC, the GILAC, the GILIAC.
I'm pretty sure my eyes just glazed over.
You're not listening anymore? What?
I don't know what you're talking about. All right, let's move on off of that.
Okay.
We got some fun news. Let's skip this for right now. I want to bring this in at the end. Let's go ahead and just hit the injury report real quick. Because listen, the New Orleans Saints, they've got about 10 people on their injury report. None of them are names that I recognize.
Right.
And they have a couple did not participate, a couple limited protections, but these all look like depth guys to me. So I ain't worried about it really that much. Brandon Coleman, actually, he sounds a little familiar. He's a wide receiver with them. He had a neck injury, did not participate on Wednesday. He was limited today, so we'll see what happens throughout the rest of the week. But let's talk about our guys, Ren.
Yeah.
There's one name that pops up on here that concerns me. Because the rest of, Robert Ayers is there, for a shoulder. He was actually out last week, and he's back limited to participation. Devontae Bond did not participate so far this week with an ankle injury. If he's out this game, I'm not going to cry. Cam Brate, was limited in his participation with a knee and hip. Levante David, of course, he's been on with that hamstring. Desean Jackson's been on with that ankle. They've both been practicing. Gerald McCoy has been practicing as well with a biceps injury. Ryan Russell and Ryan Smith both being at full participation today. Just for some lingering injuries, they were on the injury report last year.
It's interesting. This is the guy that you pick as the troubling one.
Which one?
The guy that you haven't named yet.
Yeah.
The one you want to talk about.
Yeah, the one I want to talk about, because I didn't realize that there was an injury to this guy at all. Chris Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Godwin did not participate on Wednesday, did not participate on Thursday with an ankle injury. Let's assume he did not participate on Friday, may not play this weekend, final game. He might. We don't know yet at this point. But so far, he's a did not participate. I didn't even know he was injured from coming out of the game.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't either. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't see him get injured. It appears to me that Chris Godwin sort of takes a lot of hard hits.
Mm-hmm.
But he's always turning the ball upfield and trying to get yak, and that's how we got a 70-yard TD, or not TD reception, but a 70-yard reception against the Panthers. But so it always seems, you're like, oh God, like you didn't really need to take that hard of a hit, like that half yard's not worth that.
Right.
Yes, I want you to get upfield and try to get an extra 3, 5, 7 yards, but 6.5 is just as good as 7 at that point. So yeah, I didn't know he was injured either. But it's interesting to me that Desean Jackson's possibly coming back, but you're more excited. You're not excited about that. You're more upset that Godwin may not play. Like you think that's going to be a bigger factor in the game.
It's the more surprising one. I mean, I've seen the reports out there. I've seen the headlines and people throughout the week who have said, hey, Desean Jackson is back. Desean Jackson will play this Sunday. So it didn't surprise me when I pulled up the injury report to look at it. Chris Godwin surprised me. I just, he didn't participate. Oh, he's got an ankle injury. Oh, that's no good.
All right. All right, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, I think
I looked at the injury report yesterday, and that's how I was, but that was a whole 24 hours ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. So, Ren, do you want to take a stab at the inactive predictions? I mean, they still have a whole nother day of practice, another injury report to come. Do you even want to take a stab at it?
Well, I feel like you're talking me out of it, so no.
All right. One name I guarantee you will be on there. Ryan Fitzpatrick. No.
Ryan Griffin.
Ryan
Griffin will be on there.
Yeah.
That Gaddis guy that you thought was going to come on.
Yeah, no, he'll be on there.
It It was just, he was just too, he'd only been with the Bucs for like 2 days. Like,
right.
he didn't, I thought your line of thinking was good on that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like the other guys are tackles and they're thin at guard, so they're going to start that guy or activate him at least, I should say. But, yeah, he'd only been with the team for like 2 days, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
So now I don't want to take a stab at it.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody's declared out yet, so until they do that. I mean, even if you go with Ryan Griffin, you go with the DNPs for this week so far, Devontae Bond and Chris Godwin, it's still, there's a range of people out there. All right, let's get to the news and wrap up the show here, Ren.
All right.
A couple of things we just didn't get to talk about a whole lot coming out of the game, especially since we missed our final thought show. We'll start at the end of the Panthers game. Jameis goes in, has one of those fumbles that we talked about earlier this week, falls on the ball, gets the ball back, but the referee comes up and points his finger the other way, and even Julius Peppers is like, what the heck, he had the ball. Jameis Winston loses his ever-loving mind. I thought he was going to go headbutt a ref, which is honestly, I might have done, personally. Probably a good thing that I'm not the one who's out there. But now we've had some time to let that simmer. We know that Jameis went up and apologized to the ref later because that's what Jameis does. What are your thoughts on this? It seems like everybody's spinning thoughts on the whole Jameis Winston thing. I'll give you a chance to chime in.
I don't have a problem with it. It's very easy to sit back and not be a fan of a team and see behavior like that and point your finger and be like, oh, despicable,
Immature.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of it. But every time OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. does something, I'm like, see? And you know what? What it really is, I just don't like the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I've never liked the guy. I do the same thing with Cam Newton. Like, see? You know why? I don't like Cam Newton. I don't care. I just don't like the guy. I think he's a jerk. I think they're both jerks. Bill Laimbeer back in the days of basketball, the Pistons, Bulls, the Jordan, Isaiah Thomas years. I hated that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you play at that level and there's that much competition and and then you got this losing streak that's going on and you've been fighting and scratching the whole entire game and then you mess up and the game could be over because of you, but you save it for just a little bit longer, No guarantee we're going to go down and kick a field goal to tie it. No guarantee. But at least, you're giving yourself a chance. And you go down there, you dive on it, and then someone just takes it away from you. From your eyes, it's just a blatantly wrong call. How could you possibly not see that? It feels like they're doing it personally to you. I've been in that situation, rec soccer, and I'm, some of the things come out of my mouth a couple hours later, having beers with the guys. I'm like, geez, I can't believe I did that, or I can't believe I said that. I lost it a little bit. And that's, with a bunch of freaking 30-year-old dudes kicking the ball around. So I get it. Is it fair that I call Odell Beckham Jr. an immature crybaby, and then I call Jameis Winston a fiery competitor? No, it's not. But I'm going to anyway. And when you couple that with what happened in the locker room, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit, it sort of fits. Now, I will say when Jameis loses it, he really loses it. When he got the flag thrown on him, first he's losing on the field, then they get him to the bench, then he's walking down the bench and loses it, then he sees the flag and he comes back on the field and runs over Shelton Quarles. That's when it was getting okay, man, you gotta calm down now. But who am I to say how passionate or unpassionate or mature, immature? So if you have nothing invested in the team whatsoever, from the outside, you're like, what a douche. And then, but if, you're around the team, around the guy every day, and you follow the team as closely as we do and our listeners do, you don't mind it. You're like, yeah, good for him, because that's sort of how I've felt after a lot of these games that I've watched.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm certainly doing the instant cast. We have had our fair share of nights where one of the two of us, or even some of the people who call in, are having their own personal outburst. Here's the big thing that comes out. I agree with everything you just said, by the way. The thing that I question, and I feel like I remember the TV announcers talking about this, or maybe I heard about this from somewhere else, and I don't know if this is true. I don't even know that I fully understood it correctly, but if I did, basically the way it went was, the ref came in, he called it for Carolina, and once he called it for Carolina, they couldn't reverse it. Even if he's wrong, they couldn't reverse it because he already called it for Carolina.
I think they can reverse it if it gets reviewed.
Yeah, okay. Well, my question is, why not? Why didn't they do that? Why didn't,
why didn't the
Koetter
NFL
not throw a flag on that? And that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. Why can't he? That's dumb.
Because it's 2 minutes in the NFL. Because they're trying to speed the game up is what they're doing.
Yeah, they need to amend that rule. Because
Go ahead. What they need to do is actually review things that need to be reviewed. Like, they didn't review the place the ball spot on the 4th and 1.
Yeah.
Like, that was really close.
Mm-hmm.
And the more replays you saw, the more it was like, hey, he might not have made that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the spot was really good from what the replays looked, and they made it by a nose. I mean, just a little bitty bit. So then I think the NFL failed there, and then I think the NFL failed again by not reviewing it.
Yeah, but I tell you what, a couple of games ago, Ren, I think it was the one you and I were at. Maybe it was the Lions game. I don't remember exactly which one, but there was a situation where they were trying to review what was happening. Oh, was that catch with O.J. Howard? Was it a catch and then he got hit, or was it a catch and turned into a runner and all that? And the people from New York called in to the refs and changed their whole thing. Now, they can do that then. They need to be calling in saying, hey, listen, I mean, we could see it on TV. Surely they could see it back there and call in and say, no. Listen, guys, that's horrible. This is the thing that bothers me about that whole deal, is the fact that I get it. They want to speed up the game. They don't want coaches to use challenge flags to basically be an extra couple of timeouts in the last 2 minutes. I get it. But still, you've got to fix this. The NFL is always changing the rules. This is a situation they screwed up twice in one game at the end of this game, and then even and there's multiple other games this season that we could point to where the refs have really botched a call in the final 2 minutes, but because of whatever rule that they have, we can't challenge it, or there's nothing we can really do about it. You just got to go with whatever the ref says on the field, and people go, oh, stop crying about it. No. Listen, that I think is the thing that bugs me the most about that. But, Ren, you mentioned, we'll move on here for the sake of time, you mentioned a second ago what followed the whole Jameis outburst thing in the locker room later that night, which is not anything that we really have had a chance to talk about. Apparently, there's a little bit of a scuffle in the locker room. And, as best as we know, I don't think anybody has fully confirmed it, but as best as we know, that it was Jameis and Quan getting into the face of Swaggy for jumping off sides and basically handing them the game there at the end. There were some other things that happened, but basically, and after being told not to, and lots of other things going on, that got to the point that they had to hold the media back so that things could cool off a little bit. Lots of cussing and shouting that just happened to be picked up on a microphone somewhere for Buccaneers radio. What are your thoughts on these guys getting into Swaggy's grill, and what's your thought on Swaggy over the course of this year?
Well, it has been confirmed that Jameis Winston got into a conversation because he said that in his presser. Someone asked about it, like, that you got into I don't know if they called it altercation, but they made it sound very, so you and Swaggy had some, we're talking after the game, and and it was confrontation. He goes, I didn't get in a confrontation with Chris Baker. He's like, I joined in on a conversation that was already going on. Mm-hmm. So by that, and if we believe that Quan was also the person who was there or talking about it, that it sounds like him and Quan were going at it, because the story goes that Chris Baker didn't seem very upset about losing. Mm-hmm. And then you pull that boneheaded play, it's like, hey, Jameis, don't fumble the ball, and he fumbles. Hey, carry, use a tray, when you bring that drink out and they don't use a tray. Mm-hmm. Like, you just told the person, and that's the most infuriating part about it. That he was, being Chris Baker, happy-go-lucky, la-di-da-di-da, making $6 million, whatever. Mm-hmm. Once the game's over, it's all about, I was going to say something about hot dogs. That's not fair. And some of the players took exception to that, and it's reported that one was Quan, and Jameis pretty much, confirmed that he was one of the players as well. Mm-hmm. So yes, the 10-minute cool-off period was extended a little bit, till, the print media and the camera crews were allowed in there. Once again, I don't have a problem with it. If there's a little 4-second, 5-second clip out there of Levante David and Joe McCoy's reaction after Swaggy jumped, mm-hmm. and they're just like, they wanted to punch him like right in the face. Like, it was like, like, I just told you. It's like, I just told you. So, my opinion about Swaggy Baker,
because we all liked him coming into the season, right? We all liked the signing.
That's what I'm saying. I'm holding reservations. Knee-jerk reaction, half a sack all year, something like maybe 30 tackles. I can probably look it up real quick. Like, a disappointment. But then it's also not fair for his half sack because Mike Smith isn't using him on third down situations.
Right.
So, what do you want the guy? What do you want the guy to do? Mm-hmm.
Well, he got a little jolly earlier this year, saying he wasn't being used the way he wanted to be used. He joined in with T.J. Ward. Certainly.
He has 32 tackles, 23 solos, and half a sack. So that's a nice output for $6 million. Like, So I can understand how people, and I've heard just about everybody, Peter Report guys, the Joe Buc'In guys, like Rick Stroud, I believe I've heard. They're just like, no, there's no way you can bring him back, like nothing. It's because the Bucs don't owe him any money next year. Mm-hmm. Now, coaching change, defensive coaching change, things change. Maybe this got through to him, and he's not, because Chris Baker went on Twitter right away doing damage control, basically. From what I think is happening, is like, oh crap, I'm getting cut. I already had a reputation of not really giving a crap. Now I just, signed this free agency deal, and this team needs defensive line help desperately, but they don't want me in the building. Who's gonna sign me now? So he's like, oh, I care about winning. We got to turn this around. Blah 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 stuff. Mm-hmm. So he started doing damage control on Twitter. But I'm going to hold out reservations. Has Chris Baker been a disappointment? Yes, he has. But I don't know how he's been in the locker room. He came in behind the 8 ball because of the report from Ira Coffin from Joe Buc'In, where, he let it, as soon as they signed him, he let it know early that he heard from a Washington executive, Washington Redskins, where Baker used to play, was that, I think the quote was, good player, doesn't like to practice.
Right.
And then we saw it. So it turned out to be true. The only part that didn't turn out to be true was the good player part. Right. Yeah. So you could sort of put up with, it's taking 30 minutes to put your socks on. Oh, I missed all the OTAs. Oh, darn. Being called out in Hard Knocks by the rookies. Some top 10 things you won't see at Buccaneers practice. Chris Baker taking 3 reps in a row.
Right. And those are the kind of things, by the way, they're funny because they're true, and they're only funny if they're true.
Yeah. It's like, it's like me saying Gerald McCoy is the best jockey I've ever seen. That's not funny. I mean, it's not even ironic. Anyway, that was a terrible example. But, boo, Ren, boo. But so I'm
That,
still
folks,
holding
is
out.
proof that we do not pre-write this show.
But I'm still holding out reservations because we don't know about the coaching change. We don't know about defensive scheme. We just don't know. And honestly, for a free agent defensive lineman, his contract is not bad. I was shocked how much we got him for when we, because like Sean Jackson's was like twice as much, and they were both first day signings. So I still think they're going to try to turn it around unless there's unless this has been going on all the time. And for players to blow up at you finally, after a game, maybe finally, then maybe either way, I'm not going to be surprised. But for me, I don't want to go on a limb and go, get that guy out. There's no way he can be back, and he'd be back. Because we did that with, Chris Conti, there's a couple guys like, no way that guy's coming back. When they came back, you're like, oh, well, I guess, yeah, I can see it. And Conti's had probably the most consistent year at safety.
I would agree.
That doesn't mean he's the best safety, just the most consistent. But, Baker's making 4.8 next year and the year after that. It's not a huge cap hit, so we'll have to see. But his play has been disappointing. Me personally, his attitude has rubbed me the wrong way since he got here. The Ira Kaufman report didn't help, but I thought he was just a goof and a clown in Hard Knocks, and then pile on how he doesn't like to practice. It's just not the attitude I like for players on the team that I follow to have. And then when you don't back it up in any way, shape, or form on the field with play, then it all molds together to like get this guy out of here. But as of right now, I'm just gonna hold my tongue and say, "Boo, Chris." Boo.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm right there with you. It's not the kind of attitude that I like on my team, or that I want around my players, or that I want seeping into my locker room, unless that play is backed up with some pretty big numbers. At least pretty decent, and it just hasn't been. Do I think that that's enough to say cut him this year? Maybe. I don't know. Listen, Swaggy's not had a great year, but you know what? Neither has Will Golston. Honestly, I mean, Gerald McCoy's had a really good year, but I don't know that his numbers would really show that.
Yeah.
Now you and I look at him and we watch him game to game, so we know that he's had a really good year. We know that Levante David has had a pretty dang good year. But he once again gets snubbed for the Pro Bowl, and there's reasons for that, but still, he got nominated last year, so just the team as a whole has had a down year. So to look at Swag and say, oh, you've had a down year, so you're going to get cut, when the reality is the entire team has had a down year, I have a hard time piecing those two things together.
Besides Gerald McCoy, name me a defensive lineman that earned their paycheck this year.
I mean, the bunch of them showed up.
Yeah,
they and by that I mean they were physically present.
And I guess earn your paycheck's not really fair because, they'll get paid differently, and the numbers that they're actually making is sort of, mind-boggling to the most of us. So I guess which defense, besides Joe McCoy, name a defensive lineman that didn't underperform.
And I'll tell you what, I've seen people out there who have said, listen, if we cut Ayers, if we cut Baker, if we cut Golston, then this is how much money we're going to have next year. And I'm like, okay, but you cut those guys, and you're left with, you're left with Gerald McCoy, Clinton McDonald, an aging Clinton McDonald, Silver Salinga, who has been on the inactive list several times, and Ryan Russell, who has been injured and also on the inactive list several times, and Will Clark.
And Stevie Tuikolvatu,
who's been on IR all year. So, that's not exactly, you're losing your starters at that point.
Yeah, that was that dumb crap that DeKemper was pumping out, It's like he picks two guys that don't get sacks, and one guy who's having a down year, and go, $17.5 million for 2 sacks. What kind of crap is that? We could have had a Calais Campbell for that money. Okay, yeah, we could have if he would have signed with the Bucs, if he wanted to come to the Buccaneers.
Well,
yes, and then now your
Calais,
roster's down.
You can't. I'm sorry, Red, to cut you off. You can't replace 3 players with 1 Calais Campbell.
That's
you're,
what I'm
you're not
saying.
going to put Gerald McCoy and Calais Campbell out there and just say, all right, you guys are the line. That you can't do that.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
Well, okay, great. Now you've spent this money. Your roster's short 2 guys.
Yeah.
However,
Ren, let me, and I don't do this often. Let me come to DeKemper's defense.
Oh,
he makes a point. $17 million for 2 sacks is not okay. The point that he's making there is okay. The implication that I think he's making of get rid of that guy and pick up 1 Calais Campbell, that's not okay. But the point that he's making, I can't fully disagree with him on that. That X amount of dollars for 2 sacks is not okay. And
here's why. Here's why you can't fully disagree with him. Because he picked Will Golston, who doesn't rush the passer. He doesn't rush the passer. He's not in on 3rd down. We knew he didn't rush the passer. That's why he has incentives on his contract, and he makes more money for just about every sack he gets. The other guy he picked was Chris Baker. Okay.
Also not on 3rd down.
Doesn't play on 3rd down. The other guy he picked was Robert Ayers, who was having a down year. I get that. But that's like saying Jameis Winston, if we get rid of Jameis Winston, we could have had, because he only gets 300 yards rushing, we could have had, for the money we're paying Jameis Winston, we could have had Ezekiel Elliott for that money. And look at how much more rushing yards we need. Okay, great. Well, now we need a quarterback, dumbass. That's why it's freaking stupid. He just picked guys with high salaries that aren't in the game to make sacks. It's like, hey, Brett Grimes doesn't have any sacks. Jesus, if we could have got rid of his contract, we could have picked up Calais Campbell. It's just because they're on the defensive line doesn't mean they're to get their
okay.
sacks.
So now let me pile on. Just add up the entire collective salary of the defense and say, however many million. What would that be? $120 million for. I don't know what.
Let's go cherry pick around the league
for 4 games that we won or that you could defend or not be able to close out any game. I mean, you could expand that the other way, right? You could small it down or you could expand it the other way. Anyway, point being, Swaggy Baker, he's not making a stupid amount of money. We could see him back. I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion that he's gone, but it wouldn't surprise me either.
Who are we talking about, Baker?
Baker, yeah.
Yeah, I like when we said Jaquiz Rogers 50-50, Baker's like 80-20 gone in my book. But, a lot of things are going to change between now and when it's time to start, shaping out the roster.
Yeah, we still got about a month and a half on that. So, all right, well, let's move off Baker. Let's talk about another former Washington Redskin. This is kind of a big news story, and I'm putting that in air quotes, Ren. A big news story that broke this week. Desean Jackson, somebody found his truck wrapped around a tree, had a bunch of weed and a couple of hollow point bullets, which, by the way, are legal in the state of Florida. But no driver was found nearby. Truck was registered to Desean. Police got in touch with Desean, and he said, a buddy of mine stole it or took it without permission. And so he's, cooperating. Somebody's, trying to run something up, said, oh, look, this has happened, and the Bucs haven't even commented on it yet. And I'm going, no, because Jason Light actually came out and said, we're aware of the situation. We know that it's a thing with Desean. It's a personal matter. He's handling it, and he's cooperating fully. Done. So the Bucs have commented. But big news story, Ren?
Yeah, no. I mean, this thing has gotten more run, and now as I'm saying this, we're actually talking about it, so I'm guilty, I guess, of that crap when you get mad at the media about,
No, but this is what I say. We're not reporting the news. We're commenting on the news.
Yeah, so this is such a non-story. He said he wasn't in town, and that's easily checked by his cell phone. Like, just ping his cell phone or go back, when he said, if he sent anything, if he had his phone on wherever he was. And you said a bunch of weed. It's not a bunch of weed. It's a misdemeanor. the amount of weed that was found in the truck, and a couple of bullets rolling around on the floorboard. Like, and the only reason it's mentioned at
legal
all
bullets,
is because
but they were legal bullets.
Yeah, it's because they're bullets. If it was like, oh my God, look, there's two tampons rolling around, drill bits. Yeah, oh God, or something that actually could hurt somebody, like I don't know,
nunchucks.
I guess
nunchucks,
hammer, a hammer. So it's just like, okay, whatever. Yeah, you got to report it and throw it out there, but sort of like it's like the Jameis thing or the Cam Newton thing with me. Anytime something bad, something negative comes out around this guy, if you don't like that person, people are going to jump on him. There was that diva talk, and this is how he is, and this is where he came from, and how he grew up in California, and he's never got sort of out of that kind of culture. And it's just like, oh God, it's just whatever. This thing will be gone, thankfully, by as soon as the Bucs kick off at 4:25 or 4:30 on Sunday. It'll never be brought up again.
Yeah, and
I'm happy with that. It's just, friend borrowed his truck and wrecked it and left like some weed fell out of his pocket as he was leaving the scene. That's what happened.
So
okay,
yeah. So this is one of those stories. First of all, this is why we usually wait till the end of the week to do Buck in the News, because we want to get the whole story before we start talking about it. But this is I think it's just part of dealing with the news in the day and age that we live in, of how fast information flows. Because back in the day, like before they would have actually known about this story and been able to report on it, the entire thing would have come out, and the article that would have been written would have said, hey, this happened, and here's the conclusion to that whole thing. But that's not what's happening. The way the truck was found, wrapped around, it's registered to Desean Jackson. We'll update you when we have more information. Like we're not even getting a full...
Desean Jackson's truck found wrapped around a tree with weed and firearms in it.
But we don't know anything else. We'll let you know when we... Okay, then you don't have a story yet. You have a part of a story. You have the opening line of a story. Like, it's and I'm not going to begrudge the news media for it. That's part of their job. That's what they do, and they use, things that fly at the speed of light, to do stuff like this. But it is part of, I don't know, it's just indicative of the day and age. And, so they build this up, and all of a sudden it gets to the end, and it's more anticlimactic than the end of a J.J. Abrams movie.
Hi-oh.
So, just, anyway, yeah, I feel like that's the same thing. This is just, it's a non-story.
I would have said M. Night Shyamalan, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but his movies still are climactic. Like, they're a letdown for sure, but, anyway. All right, I've just got two more things.
Stephen King movie?
Yeah.
Stephen King movie?
Yeah,
where it always turns into, like, aliens or the hand of God.
Listen, I'm not trying to throw any spoilers out there, but if you haven't seen it yet, this is what I realized about it. It is just a boggart living in the Chamber of Secrets. And if you don't catch that... Is it
boggart or boggart?
It's boggart. Lots of English reasons why it's boggart. But,
okay.
Yeah, if you don't catch the reference, it's Harry Potter. Go look it up. But you watch that movie through that lens, and it changes the whole movie. All right, anyway, moving on. Ren, this is to go back to something that you had talked about actually a couple of episodes back, so let's circle back around to it. Mike Evans is just 54 yards from hitting the 1,000-yard mark of the season, and that is important. Why?
Because it's the 1,000-yard mark.
Yeah.
Or there's a couple reasons.
Uh-huh.
I heard today, I think on Greg Allman's podcast, that there's only been 2 wide receivers that's done it in their first 4 years. Right. A.J. Green and Randy Moss. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty good company. And Mike's missed a game this year. But, so, I guess that's important. Mike's numbers are down. He didn't get the yak like he talked about, yards after catch that he talked about in preseason that he was trying to improve on. It seemed for a stretch of 3 or 4 games there he sort of disappeared altogether from this offense. But the past couple of games, Jameis has sort of looked for him and made the connection. The Saints game, I don't care if we win or lose. I really don't. I want us I hope we win. But if we lose, there's always the brighter side of, okay, well, we didn't lose any spots in the draft. Because it doesn't really matter in the final record. I just want us to play well. My only fear going into this game is Jameis forcing Mike Evans the ball to try to get him these 54 yards instead of just letting it come naturally. Now, I can understand it's like late in the fourth and, maybe the game's out of hand either way, 2 scores, 10 or more, 11 or more, I guess. Then I can see Jameis trying to force him the ball if he doesn't have it yet. But if he comes out and the game plan is to get the ball to Mike Evans, and he's going to try to squeeze it in some tight windows, and one gets picked or one gets picked sixth, or he's holding onto the ball too long, waiting for Mike to clear and gets sacked and he fumbles to the Saints recover, I'm going to lose my mind. I will, because some of the things Jameis says, I'm just like, first off, don't say that out loud, and second off, don't do that. Remember when he said in the preseason, well, anytime Mike's one-on-one in the red zone, we have this deal, I just throw it to him. Like, what? And then after the Carolina game, he said right after the game, I told Bobo, we're going to get you a touchdown right here. Like, he's saying that in the huddle. He hasn't seen the defense, hasn't seen who, like, he's like, basically, like, I'm going to throw you the ball no matter what. And it's like, no. It's like, no. Like, well, even if you think that.
Yeah, remember, like, was it last year, maybe 2 years ago? He goes into the huddle, and they're telling the story. They repeated the story several times. He goes in the story and says, okay, who wants to catch the ball? Who wants a touchdown? And Mike Evans goes, me. And he goes, okay, I'm coming to you. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, what?
Yeah. So, I can't. I would like to be able to put this past Jameis as he's not going to feed it. I did say a couple weeks ago that it's going to be third on his list of goals for the rest of the season. Win ball games, don't turn the ball over, make sure Mike Evans get 1,000 yards. And he's done a good job, and he's only got 54 to go. But, they're probably going to travel rookie Pro Bowler, Lattimore, wherever Mike goes. He's going to travel with Mike. And if they try to force the ball early and he throws a couple of picks or some bad things happen, that's the only thing that will make me mad about this game. Nothing else will. If the Saints blow us out, fine. Because I have no illusions the defense are going to be able to stop Ingram and Kamara. Like, I have no illusions that that's going to happen. If it happens, yay, good job, guys. But if it doesn't, it's like, okay, like, I wasn't expecting it to happen. Drew Brees throwing the ball, not having any pressure. Like, defensively, I don't think we can stop them. Offensively, you really have to expect that there's going to be some dumb turnovers. There's going to be, I shouldn't say dumb turnovers. What I meant to say is self-inflicted errors. There's going to be some things where you're just like, man, it's like we keep killing ourselves offensively. But if it comes to that because he's trying to force the ball to Mike Evans just to get him that 1,000 yards, it's just really going to bother me.
And, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen inside the red zone. Because, that's where things go wrong for the Bucs.
Yeah.
Is inside the red zone. All right. Well, Ren, we've got one more topic to discuss. And it's the big topic. We've already talked about it a little bit in our email section earlier at the top of the show. Coach Koetter, in his press conference this week, admitted and said, yeah, the rumors are a distraction. I mean, how could they not be? Ira Kaufman on his podcast, I've heard him say this several times, and I said this several weeks ago on this podcast, kind of sort of where I am, is, he is of the opinion, Ira is, that it's Gruden or Koetter or no one else. Like, if the Glazers can get Gruden, fine, go to Gruden, fire Koetter, whatever. If they can't get Gruden, then just stick with Koetter. Now, they've been ringing the bell. Ira and the guys over at Joe Bucks Fan have been ringing the bell pretty hardcore to stay with Koetter. Their compadre over there, Justin Pulowski at the Bucks Uncensored, has been really hammering bringing back Gruden. So it's interesting, that all those guys get their own opinions over there. But Ren, you said earlier that you're very firmly in the keep Koetter camp.
Yes.
I'll be honest with you. I have gone back and forth with this one over the last couple of weeks. I really have. Like, I understand why people could make a case to fire Koetter. I understand why people are frustrated. I understand, and if you take the frustration out of it, if you take all, and you just look at the pure facts of where we are, which I feel like in a lot of ways our friends over at the Pewter Report have done a pretty good job. Like, they really have, they have whatever information they have, they're hammering stuff, but I feel like they've, Trevor specifically, I think he did a really good job of summing some stuff up of, listen, if it's not the guy, it's just not your guy, you got to move on. They have built the argument for, I think, firing Koetter without actually calling for it until recently. So it's back and forth. It's back and forth. It's back and forth. For me personally, I am still staying with the camp of keeping Coach Koetter. That would be my preference. That would be, if I could write a letter to the Glazers, keep Coach Koetter. I think Ira makes a really good point of, listen, do you want to become known as a franchise that if you have one bad season, you're gone? That's a horrible look on you as an ownership group. I've gone back and forth on it, and the reason why I've come down to keep Koetter is because I've not been fully well, the reason I've said keep Koetter is because I have been going back and forth on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if I'm going to default to something, it's going to be stay with the coach you got. Unless you're 100% sure that you know where you're going as an upgrade, that you know where you're going is good, or you really have to get rid of this guy, which I don't think the Bucs are in that position with Koetter. I don't, like with Schiano and Raheem, I think they had to get rid of those guys when they did. Now I might be wrong, but I think they did. I think with Gruden, it was when they got rid of Gruden the first time, or the only time they got rid of Gruden, they were playing scared a little bit. I think they were anticipating some weird things. When they got rid of Dungy and they moved on to Gruden, which we know that they actually were first intending Parcells, I think they really felt like that was a true upgrade. And I'm okay with that. If they feel like Gruden is going to be an upgrade over what we currently have with Koetter, then fine. Go with the upgrade. I don't like it, but I can at least back you up on it. What I don't want to see happen is to go, oh, you had a bad season, you're 4-12, you're 5-11, whatever the final record winds up being. So, bam, you're out of here. Okay, Jason Light, now go find us our next guy. That is not the situation I want to see this team in. That's not the situation I want to see the Glazers get us into. So if they feel like they're moving on to somebody specific, I don't like it, but fine, I can get with it. But I'm in the camp of keep Koetter.
Yeah, I am too. At the first time I heard Ira's, take like Gruden or nothing type of deal, I thought it was a good idea. But then, if you think it through, it's really not. Basically, he's saying it's like stay with your wife unless Kate Upton walks through the door. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Like, you're cool where you're at unless your dreams, every dream you ever had come true, walks through the door. But how many coaches are going to get fired this year? Do you think?
I've heard numbers as high as 14 or 15, which is like half the league. That's almost half the league. I just don't see that happening. Maybe it will be. I don't know.
So roughly. So what do you think?
I don't follow these.
I'm not going to come back and throw it in your
Okay,
face.
let's split the difference and say 8.
Okay, 8. So that's 8 head coaches.
Yeah.
That's also 8 offensive coordinators and 8 defensive coordinators. So now we're up to 32 head coaching candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to tell me that out of all those people, it's either going to be John Gruden or nobody? the problem with Ira's comment is he doesn't have anybody else to pick from yet. He's picking from a pool of 2.
Right.
You know, it's John Gruden, Dirk Koetter, or I have no idea. Mm-hmm. Well, let's stick with Dirk Koetter because if you match him against the Abyss and a mystery hole, then yeah, he wins.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on keep Dirk Koetter. There are some things that bother me about Dirk Koetter. Some things that are almost like telling Chris Baker not to jump off sides, and he does it
anyway.
You know? Yeah. There are some things about Dirk Koetter. That's how I feel. Like, how are you not doing this, or how are you not seeing this, or how you are not changing this?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that when a first-time head coach doesn't, you have to let the coach grow with the team as well. You have to let him grow into the job. I like the relationship, even despite those, which I believe are false, comments about Dirk and Jameis' relationship. I like his offense.
Mm-hmm.
I like, I like how he is as a head coach. You know, he's not going to throw players in the bus in the media. He's going to shoot you straight 95% to the media as far as when they're asked questions. He keeps things in-house. There's certain things that he just doesn't talk about. And I like all those things. Now, like I said, there's some things that sort of drive me a little batty, but you know what? The next time I step on a field as an NFL coach in any capacity will be the first time. So what the hell do I know? So as far as Ira's take, it makes a lot of sense when you first hear it until you get the full picture of what if Bill Belichick gets fired? You know, this is not going to happen, but what if?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Bill Belichick goes, you know what? I'm tired of coaching the Patriots. Tom Brady thinks that, you know, I can't win a Super Bowl without him. I quit. And the team I would like to coach is Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you think the Glazers are going to take that phone call?
Yeah.
The answer, yeah.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. That's it.
Yeah.
So without knowing all the candidates to possibly replace Dirk Koetter, saying like it's Gruden or nobody it's very short-sighted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the Gruden camp. I think he needs time to
the Koetter camp.
Expand the Koetter. Thank you. Sorry. I'm in the Koetter camp. I think he needs time to grow into the job. Yes, there's some things that bother me about him, but I like his offense. I like the way he treats his players. I like the way, bring that up again. I think the players play for him and they like him and they like his no BS attitude. Yeah. Once again, there's a couple things you need to change, but yeah, I even though this season has been a ginormous disappointment, I still like the direction the franchise is heading.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I want to clarify, by no means do I say that we should keep Koetter just so we don't become known as an organization that doesn't let you have one bad year. I just see a lot of – it's a good point, but it's not the only reason to keep Koetter. There are other reasons that I have to keep Koetter. A lot of them are what you just pointed out. I do like where we were going with an offense. My God, if we could just freaking figure out the damn red zone.
Right.
Yeah, that is the thing that sticks in my craw. All right, I'm going to go back. Who was it? Was it Forrest, Chris, one of those guys, Walter and Winnie? One of those people emailed us and said, what's been your biggest disappointment? Red zone. Converting in the dang red zone. That's been a big disappointment for me this year. I've been harping on it since the preseason. You told me, Rand, not to worry about it until we got into the season, and it never fixed itself. And here we are, week 16, 17, whatever we are, and it's still the problem.
True.
They've got to figure that out. They've got to figure that out. The defense, look, we can say whatever we want about Mike Smith. Yeah, great. We had a beautiful defense in the last half of last year, but the first half of last year, not great. And the vast majority of this year, also not great. But, they're also missing some stuff. Yeah, there was the Jameis injury and there were some other things. Who knows? But listen, I want to see what they do in year 3 because I'll tell you what, if Koetter comes out next year and he goes 10-6, this year's forgotten.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, and we just don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. Now, if Koetter comes back out next year and goes 4-12 or 5-11 again, 6-10, something like that, okay, maybe we could have that conversation then. I don't know. I'm just on the camp. I'm just on the side of not just giving guys time to develop, but you've got to give a system time to develop. You've got to get a process time to develop. You've got to allow that. And I'll go back and I'll point all the way back to our very first head coach, John McKay, right? 0-26 his first 2 seasons, winds up 2-28, right? By the end of his second season. And by the end of his 4th year, he's leading us to the NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. Culverhouse would have been perfectly within his rights to fire John McKay after that second season.
Oh, yeah.
Perfectly within his rights. And maybe he would have if he hadn't won anything. But they didn't. They stayed with him, and look what happened. Now, unfortunately, curse of Doug Williams, we never got back there after that, and whatever, but still.
Do you know how many head coaches the Pittsburgh Steelers have had?
3.
Yeah.
3, right?
3.
Like in their history, 3.
Yeah. 3.
Yeah. And this goes back
and they all have a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
At least one. Every single head coach they've ever had at least has one Super Bowl.
Yeah. Exactly. You've got to stick with them, even through the down years. Even through the regression or whatever. And that's why, yes, this season has been a big, fat, whopping disappointment. And people hate it, and I hate it. I'm a Bucs fan too. But, at the end of the day, and here's the deal, and this is what I'll say, and whether it's Gruden, whether it's somebody else, if the team does decide to move on from Koetter, at some point they have to just say, we're going to ride with this guy, hell or high water, for the next 5 years and see what happens. Like, at some point they've just got to say that. And I feel like they should say that with Koetter, personally. Like I said, if they happen to be able to get Gruden, I'm not going to yell at them for it. I understand the move. I don't agree with it, but I understand the move. If there's somebody, if it's a clear upgrade, you gave the example, if kind of a pie in the sky, if Belichick got fired or quit or whatever, and he said he wanted to come to Tampa Bay, yeah, listen, there are certain situations where you might have to make that call, but those are very few and far between, and I just don't think we've hit those with Koetter yet. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
and
I agree, man.
We'll find out probably in about a week, Ren. We'll find out in about a week. Now, here's a good question, and this is just a thing that Bucs fans should be aware of. Black Monday is coming up, just in 4 days from now? 3 days from now, however that works. We saw with Lovey made it all the way to Thursday before he got fired.
But once again, Lovey fired himself. Like they were not trying to fire Lovey.
Yeah.
Lovey fired himself.
Yeah. At least that's the report we hear, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I know what you're getting at. You're getting at that if Koetter has a job Tuesday morning when you wake up, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's safe.
Yeah. It's just a caution. A caution is all I'm saying to Bucs fans, as they go out there. On either side. If they're in the keep Koetter camp to go, woo, we're safe. That may not be the case.
Good point. Great point.
All right, Ren. Well, that is all I have for this show as we've kind of meshed together our Final Thoughts show and our Buck in the News show together in this one, a little bit of a supersized show, but still a big show in there nonetheless, a good show nonetheless. So do you have any final thoughts as we head out of here tonight?
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about all the things that I said while you were talking, just a little bit ago, and I sort of noticed that I banged I banged on every guy that works at Joe Bucks fan. And I just want to say that I don't have anything against him, that's the way it's sort of set up. There are a lot of things that I don't agree with DeKemper, but there's a lot of things I don't agree with everybody, what they say, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that listen to this podcast who are like, Ren, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Am I right, Brian, in Memphis? Yes, I am. So, I've been banging a little bit on Ira and DeKemper and, brought up the bet with his bits. I read their site just about every day, and I think they really do a good job, so I don't want anyone thinking that I'm anti-Joe Bucks fan. I'm not their best friends. A lot of things they do make me scratch my head, but I just realized that I think everything I said negative, I think I called out every single person there, so just want to say that it's just the way the show went. There was no preconceived hit piece on that. So that's my final thought.
Alrighty then.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I've said this before. I'm not trying to blow smoke up anybody's butt, but listen. I'm cool with all the media guys that we have there, and that's from Joe Bucks fan all the way over to Jenna Lane and everybody in between. And if you guys don't know, Roy Cummings is in the far corner right next to the Joe Bucks fans guys, and Jenna Lane's in the other corner of the room, in the media room. I know that because I got to spend a day there. If you'd like to hear about that adventure, go back in our feed, find One Short Day at One Buck Place. It's a cool story Ren and I got to talk about. But what I mean by that is it just traverses the entire media room. So, yeah, So, and we certainly use them all as sources for this show, on one level or another. So, with that, Ren, man, thanks so much for taking time out of kind of an off night for us. What is typically an off night? We've got one more game left this year. One more game in the season, and what that means for us here at the Pewtercast, we mentioned a couple times things are downshifting, but as we get into that downshift, the Pewtercast Awards are coming up, and
dun, dun, dun.
The nominating committee has been at work. They've got their emails back in to meet. Ren, you and I'll be sharing some of that with you here over the next couple of days. We'll get everything set up, and really pretty quickly after the end of this game, we will go live with voting for the 2018 Pewtercast Awards. You fans will be able to pick from categories such as Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Team MVP, Off the Bench Player of the Year. We'll have Rookie of the Year. We'll have Bucks Podcast of the Year. We'll have just a whole list of things. But guys, that's coming up. You guys will be able to go. You'll vote online. As far as I know, Ren, it is the only award show for the Buccaneers that is voted on by the fans. As far as I know.
The world's only fan-voted Buccaneer Award show.
There it is. And you guys will be a part of that. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for updates about the Instant Cast show. We'll figure out exactly what that looks like, especially now that the game has been flexed to a 4:30 show. And I may or may not be on the road. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I may be walking into that show, Ren, not actually having watched the game. So I'll depend on you guys to tell me about it.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we'll see. But fingers crossed I should be home in plenty of time to actually, have the show. So
you can listen to it on your phone, on your iHeartRadio. Oh, no, you don't. You can't listen on your iHeartRadio app.
No, but you can listen on the Mixler.com app. Oh, you mean to the game itself?
The game, yeah.
No, but I can listen to it on NFL Game Pass because I have that.
There you go.
Yeah, I can listen to Gene Deckerhoff call the game. So,
nice.
But anyway, it's we'll be working on all that. So, you guys have a great weekend. Buccaneers play the Saints. 4:25 is kickoff. The game has been flexed. It'll be at Raymond James Stadium. Until then, Ren, where can the people out there get a hold of you on the internet?
Best way to find me is on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk some Buccaneer football.
And if you guys want to get a hold of me, I am at Brent Allen Live on Facebook, Twitter, and all the social media places out there. And you can also reach the show at the Pewtercast on Twitter, Facebook.com/ThePewtercast, or shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. We do respond to all forms of feedback, and it's one of the more fun aspects of being a part of this Bucks fan community. Like we said, Bucks fans, we've got the Instant Cast coming up on Sunday. So until then, we'll close out this show by saying, like we always do, go Bucks.